Hello, all Dragonsworn and Ashamon. Some white cloaks out there, I'm sure, and maybe, hopefully, some new viewers checking out the channel. Welcome. Today we're going to take a look at an article that was suggested from a viewer of one of my live streams, Dear Lyle Hammock, the fan of mines. It's an inside joke there, but Lyle suggests we take a look at this because it's important, honestly, to look at some of these things because a lot of us have been saying that the Wheel of Time TV show is a precursor to what's going to happen with Rings of Power. Now, speaking for Lyle, I know Lyle, I shouldn't speak for Lyle, but Lyle, I know, is still very hopeful that the Rings of Power TV show will be worth a damn. I hope for his sakes and our sakes it is. But it's not looking that way to me, but, I'm wrong all the time. So we'll see. But we're going to take a look at this article because he suggested it, and it is, we're taking a look at. It is well, let's get into it. Rather than just sit here and babble for a while, we're gonna get into it right now. So, the Wheel of Time is the fantasy blueprint for the Lord of the Rings. Or I'm sorry, not the Lord of the Rings. It's definitely not Lord of the Rings. It's gonna be Lord of the Rings for the Rings of Power. Now, any Rings of Power fan or anybody that thinks the Rings of Power will look at all or hope that it'll look at all like Lord of the Rings. This title should make you feel doom, okay? Because it is not the fantasy blueprint that you want. You do not want the Rings of Power to look anything like the Wheel of Time. We're going to look at the article of it, but I just want to say that if this is what's going to happen, which is probably the case, the Rings of Power is DOA on arrival. It's going to be terrible because we keep getting this narrative that the Wheel of Time was very faithful to the books and to Robert Jordan's masterpiece when it's not even close. And that lie keeps getting regurgitated by all these sites because they know that's where the fan base is from the books. And you got a lot of people chirping at it to get their 5 minutes of fame or to feel, part of the in crowd. But all of us people that have read the books and are passionate about the books call it out every time. The Wheel of Time TV show has nothing to do with the Wheel of Time. But let's read this article. The Wheel of Time was Prime Video's first fantasy hit. That is arguably not true, but it wasn't much of a hit. Nobody talked about it. Didn't get stellar ratings, but whatever. With the Rings of Power coming soon, the series should be the blueprint for the Rings of Power show. I'm not saying the Lord of the Rings show because it's not going to be a Lord of the Rings show. Let's scroll down here. Prime Video is taking large steps in the world of fantasy television. The Wheel of Time was their first foray into the genre, and it was largely a success. No, definitely was not largely a success. You completely split the fan base. You now have arguing among anybody that see, that's the other thing. I'm not gonna throw stones. I'm not sure. I would love to have a discussion with somebody that likes the show and find out why, because it doesn't resemble the books at all. So you now have people that are trying to be trendy and get shills and get attention from Hollywood people gushing about it, who can't really say from people I've spoken to why they like it. And then you have the book people that are upset because it looks nothing like it should. It doesn't look like the books. So not largely a success at all. The series never shied away from delivering fantasy elements, and because of that, it developed its own unique style. Yeah, it looked like crap. It was unabashedly fantasy, bringing all the wonderful elements of the books to life. Lie. Straight up lie. Did not. It ignored all the wonderful elements of the books. Just because you say Sidar and the one power doesn't mean you're paying homage to it. I'm sorry about having this in the screen here. I can't get rid of it. I know that terrible movie. The MCU is a whole nother thing. With no consideration if they would connect with mainstream audience. No, see, this is another lie, because remember, I'm almost positive, I wish I could find it, maybe I'll try and find it, but remember the whole let's not, let everybody know that Rand is the Dragon Reborn in the first book, and let's add another dragon, another possible dragon, right? To keep it, ooh, who's the Dragon Reborn? Now there's five Ta'veren, blah 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 blah. That is exactly, it was exactly done to try and connect with mainstream audiences. They said it, they wanted to be, they wanted to be a mystery to try and capture the mainstream audience, because they didn't feel like announcing that Rand, or letting people know that Rand was probably the Dragon Reborn, would connect with the audience, which is complete idiocy. Of course it would. Just, adapt the books to the screen and make money. Lord of the Rings of Power can follow this blueprint and deliver some truly stylized and unique content. Well, there's not much content that they're adapting, so we'll see. Rings of Power will be a much larger endeavor for Amazon than the Wheel of Time was. Yep, it's going to be larger and worse, probably, because if they're following the blueprint of the Wheel of Time. Sorry, Lyle. The Rings of Power will be taking place in the Second Age Middle Earth. We'll be telling the story of elves, men, and dwarves during the intense era. The show will be boasting a huge budget. Yes, we all keep hearing about the huge budget. We all keep hearing about the huge budget. The Wheel of Time had a pretty large budget as well. Not as high as Lord of the Rings. I'm sorry. Not as high as Ring of Power. Sorry. I'm falling into the trap. I'm sorry, everybody. But they largely have wasted it. They speak of Trollocs in this at some point. The Trollocs look terrible. The Myrddraal, the Fade looked okay, but weird. And they barely use them. Most people I've talked to that haven't read the books before think the White Cloaks are the villain of the Wheel of Time, and that's just a tragedy. There are some concerns that the series will be too loose with the tightly established Tolkien lore, probably extremely loose with the lore. The first trailer seemed to offer more hope that the Rings of Power would be a delightful, authentic experience. I disagree. I think everything, I don't know, the costumes look goofy. Some of it looked fine. Like, I'm gonna, because I am not the head of the curve, the big. I don't know nearly as much about Tolkien's universe as many of you are. I'm sure most of you know a ton more than me, but I do have eyes, and my eyes were not pleased by a lot of some of the scenes. The costuming again looks goofy. The wardrobe, which is the swords and the weapons and all that looked pretty goofy as well. I mean, some of the axes looked fine, but the swords looked. I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to get over those swords. The swords look dumb. But moving on. The Wheel of Time created a beautiful fantasy world that dove headfirst into fantasy elements. The Rings of Power needs to do the same. So, because it had magic, and is that just why? I mean, because it dove into fantasy elements. So you're saying they didn't take the magic system out, so all of a sudden it's fantasy. Is that because we're looking at more like One Tree Hill, like the White Cloaks? They made a wonderful video about it. One Tree Hill or 90210 or CW fantasy. It's just a bunch of young people wondering if they're gonna hook up, and that's it. So don't follow that Rings of Power. Don't follow that, please. The Rings of Power promises a new, darker take on elves. The Wheel of Time is an expansive book series that embraces all aspects of fantasy genre. Yes, it does. It would have been nice to see that on TV. I would have loved to see that on TV. When adaptations occur, here we go. When adaptations occur, some parts can be watered down in order to appeal to a wider audience. Let's take a minute. Is that what happened with Wheel of Time? I'm pretty freaking sure, word for word, that's exactly what happened. It is a watered down, lukewarm, tasteless version of Wheel of Time. It doesn't have anything to do with Wheel of Time. It has magic, though, so it's a sprawling fantasy world. Prime Video refused to do this. Liars! Liars. Refused to do this and deliver Wheel of Time in all its fantasy glory. Bullshit. The Trollocs were huge and disgusting looking because the CGI was terrible. The fades were a walking nightmare. The fades were okay, I'll give you that, for all of the 2 scenes we saw them in. And the magic was breathtaking to see. Wrong. The magic was goofy. It was like Moraine was doing a hula hoop. It looks stupid. Channeling looks dumb. Channeling isn't just supposed to be a bunch of white crap flying out of there. You're supposed to be building weaves to accomplish something. It looks terrible. Let's be real. The show wasn't perfect. That is the first true thing you've said. But the first season stood out because it had its own style. It stood out because it was garbage. Guess what? I'm going to go watch Excalibur to cleanse my palate. Because that was made. I don't even know the exact date. That is a much better fantasy show movie than the Wheel of Time, because it was far from perfect and it didn't stand out in its own style. It looked like shit. It didn't try to be Game of Thrones. Well, that's I in parts it did, because you got people hooking up that shouldn't be hooking up. You know, we have to get that sex appeal in there. We got to get that, Lan topless doing retarded kata, showing his atomic nipples to everybody, the secret warder nipple twist technique. Those are all things to increase sex appeal of this show, which, could have been done organically, but they're just forcing that stuff in. I mean, these aren't bad-looking people. You don't need to force it in. You don't need to force these romances in. To develop them correctly, and they'll be paid off, and you'll get what you want. But they didn't do that. They have to get those relationships smashed right into the front. We got made-up blacksmith woman with Perrin. We got Nynaeve and Lan hooking up. We got Rand and Egwene hooking up in the first episode. And you don't have to call that Game of Thrones-esque, but that's definitely One Tree Hill CW 90210-esque. Which, if you're looking for 90210, okay, I guess, but I was looking for a Wheel of Time series. It stood its ground to deliver a fairly... So now we're backtracking. Fairly authentic adaptation. It wasn't even fairly. The only thing they got right are the names and a few locations. That's it. It's not even fairly. It's not even close to authentic. Putting authentic and adaptation, it should just end at fairly. And that's it. Just stop at a fairly. The Rings of Power can learn a lot from the Wheel of Time. Yes. Actually, this is a good, true statement. The Rings of Power can learn a lot from Wheel of Time. What not to do. Don't do anything the Wheel of Time did. And you may have a hit on your hands, because everybody wants it to be good, including myself. Many audience members want to see a true fantasy series. Yep, we still haven't seen one, at least not in this day and age. People want to see elves, magic, strange... Oh, whoa, what was that? Want to see elves, magic, strange creatures on large-scale battles. I want to see character development and good dialogue and the story to be followed. See, this is the problem. Look, let's dangle all this stuff in front. We want to see elves and magic and strange creatures, oh my, in large-scale battles. Look, these things are good. Don't get me wrong. I'm not we want to see elves. How freaking brainless. I just ooh, look at the elves. Come on, let's give your audience some credit. See, and this is the problem. All this stuff is getting watered down because they think we're stupid. We want to see elves and magic. Well, of course. We want to see strange creature. Sure, if they're done well. Look, who doesn't like a Balrog? Obviously, they know we like a Balrog because they show a Balrog. I have no idea if there's a reason for the Balrog to be there. But we saw it in the trailer, right? Because Balrogs are cool, right? I mean, this is like dangle the candy so we can see it. I would love to see my characters be developed, my plot line to actually make sense, the relationships between my characters to make sense. I would love to see some great choreography with sword fighting and in fighting techniques. I'd love to see some training. I'd love to see a lot of stuff that makes sense and makes the story work. This is all dangling keys and look at this. Aren't you so happy? Let's clap for the little cool looking thing. Well, it means nothing to the fucking plot. Make a coherent plot, make characters that make sense that we can get attached to, and boom, you win. It's ridiculous. It pisses me off, quite frankly, that they think we're so stupid that we just want strange creatures and large-scale battles. No, you missed the main things we want. Character development and plot that makes sense. But you can't do that because you are hack writers. The Lord of the Rings films embraced the fantasy genre and became award-winning movies. Yep. Why aren't we following what they did? A lot of character development and relationship building in that, aren't there? A plot that actually makes sense because they followed most of Tolkien's story. Weird, huh? The Wheel of Time has a strong audience who desperately looking for us. No, there's a strong audience. We're not desperately. Look, most of us, except for the people that are, and I'm sorry, I don't understand how people that like this show are Wheel of Time book fans. I don't get it unless they completely separate realities and be like, I'm okay with this. Just like, you know, if you're saying it's another turning of the wheel, it's a turning of the wheel that the Dark One's gonna win, and I hope he wins because it's ridiculous. But most of the people that are desperately looking for a second season, we're not desperately. I actually would love for the show to be canceled, but I'm gonna cover it. That's the only reason I'm looking forward to it, is covering it with you all. That's it. With my Wheel of Time fans and friends that I've made just because this show is so bad. This is you know, The Last Jedi broke me too, but this is another Last Jedi for me. The Wheel of Time being destroyed like this. And now they want it to be the rings. They want the Rings of Power to follow suit. Don't. Nobody's listening to me, but don't. The Rings of Power trailer offers hope that the series will lean heavily into the fantasy genre. Why? Because it looks like see, that's why. Because we can see a bunch of swords and stuff. I don't lean heavily into the fantasy genre. Great. What does that even mean? Because it looks like they're in medieval times? Like, is that what you're getting at? Great. That they should, because it's a fantasy epic. It should lean into the fantasy genre. What are you talking about? Embrace the genre helps the viewers become invested in the show. No shit, because they want to see a fantasy show. It makes it feel fresh, new, and exciting. Shut up. The Rings of Power doesn't need to worry about creating an audience from scratch. No, it doesn't. That's why they bought it for a gazillion dollars. And then they're going to not follow anything that the freaking... Like, look, the Rings of Power doesn't need to worry about creating an audience from scratch. Right. They bought the IP because of that. Because they know it should be an instant success. That's where they bought it. And now they're going to warp it into some bullshit. Why do you think there is an audience from scratch? Because they love the source material. They love Tolkien. Just like the Wheel of Time fans love Robert Jordan and the Wheel of Time books. But then you take it and you warp it into something else. So you're not going for that audience from scratch. You're trying to get some weird sect of people that aren't fantasy, that are not fantasy fans. That's the thing. You're trying to get non-fantasy fans to watch this show instead of leaning into the fan base. There's a reason you keep getting all these downvotes on your videos, because you're not leaning into your fan base. Wheel of Time, lean into your fan base. We will show up. We will buy your stuff. We will show the show off to everybody if it's good. But when you spit on us and tell us that it's crap, we're going to do the opposite. And there's a reason that the Wheel of Time is now a joke. The show is a joke. Nobody's watching. Don't get it twisted. Nobody's watching that show. Nobody's talking about that show. Except for us. That that are fans of the books and were hoping for something that looked like them and got burned. The people who are watching the series want to see a full-blown fantasy series. No fucking shit. Because guess what? What a stupid comment. Many fantasy shows. You can see the further we're getting into this, the more angry I'm getting. I'm sorry. Many fantasy shows can fall into the trap of trying to emulate other successful series or trying to appeal to a wider audience. Breathe. Don't let the madness take you. Don't let the madness take you. That's exactly what they did with Wheel of Time. What are we talking about? Like, come on. That's exactly what they talking about. They, instead of leaning into the millions and millions and millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of book fans, they decided we don't want them. We're going to use them because we know they're going to watch whatever drivel we put on there because they're fans and want to be good and want to see this. They decided they wanted to get their wider, One Tree Hill CW audience in there, and they warped it. So they did. That's exactly what they did. Only they didn't emulate other successful series. I don't know what they emulated. Maybe they saw a pile of shit on the floor, and they emulated that, because that's what we got with Wheel of Time. This ends up making the finished product less appealing, and can reduce interest in the show. Exactly what happened. This is exactly what's happened with Wheel of Time. You got a lot of people that went to the books because they're like, I've heard this was good. This is crap. And now they're book fans. Good for them. Love that. And then you got people that just said, I can't watch it anymore. You don't know how many people that I know that have read the book series. I used to talk to them back when the books were coming out. And they said, oh, I got through episode 3 or I got through episode 5 and I just stopped because I couldn't take it anymore. So you've alienated your fan base. And this new wider audience that you say that they shouldn't be trying to get, that's what they're trying to get. And guess what? They didn't show up. Lean into your fan base. It's the whole reason the shows or the IPs are popular. Lean into it. You'll make all the monies. The Rings of Power will undoubtedly draw in a massive audience at first. And probably for people, it will. Let's not get that wrong either. It's going to have a huge audience. But that doesn't mean it's going to have a happy audience. It doesn't need to be anything else other than what the story can be. Tolkien created tons of lore and incredible worlds for this show to use. Diving into that lore and embracing it would endear the show fans and create a wonderful experience. Yeah, it would, wouldn't it? But everything else you've said in this article is contrary to that. Because you're saying the Wheel of Time, the Wheel of Time did not do this. It did not do this at all, not even close. Changed everything. And no matter how much you want the showrunner to be an honest person and saying we nitpicked over this and copied scenes scene for scene, there is not one scene that looks like a scene in the book in that show. It's ridiculous. The Wheel of Time carved out its space in streaming arena. No, fine, but delving fully into fantasy no, it didn't. Now I've got tongue tied. The Wheel of Time didn't carve out shit because it lost half of its audience because it was crap. It didn't hold back. It definitely didn't hold back. The audience respected and appreciated that. No, we hated it because it was stupid and it didn't follow the book. The Rings of Power can use that same blueprint. Nope. Follow the source material. Respect your fans. Lean into your fan base. That's what you need to do, Rings of Power. That's it. It already has an audience with a vested interest. Yep. And it doesn't need to water down any part of the show for a wider appeal. Correct. But they will. And that's what this whole article is about. If you want them to take notes from and follow the blueprint of the Wheel of Time, you want them to water down the Rings of Power and make it lukewarm for stupid people that can't put 2 and 2 together. And they can see shiny things and big battles. So here's my shiny Balrog. Here's my big battle. Isn't that cool? Well, instead of character development that leads to things happening and plot that makes sense, that leads to these battles and to these things, using those elements in the story as they should be. Instead, we're focused on elves and magic and big battles and cool things. Didn't you see that cool Balrog? That's what we're focused on instead of creating a story and characters that make sense. Characters will drive your show. We love these characters. Make them look something like they do in their books, in their source material, and we will love it. What do you think, guys? Do you think the Rings of Power is going to follow the Wheel of Time blueprint? I think it absolutely 100% is. We've we've said that, and that's not a good thing. That's not a good thing at all. Lyle, I hope I covered this for you good. I appreciate you bringing it up. It is definitely a good article to cover. I hope the Rings of Power is good. I hope it is. I am dying for some good current year fantasy, and we're just not getting it. I don't know why. I guess I know a little bit why, but I don't know why we can't. We've gone backwards again. It's like CGI. CGI workers are overworked, so the CGI quality has gone backwards. We used to have this great CGI, and we've gone backwards. Storytelling has gone backwards. We're not good telling good stories. We've gone way backwards in terms of creating any movies. Movies and TV shows have gone backwards so far. It's ridiculous. And when we get something good, it's amazing, and we're so surprised and we're so grateful. Things like for me, the Terminal List and Reacher, even some of the Indian stuff, the RRR stuff I watched was a refreshing breath of fresh air. It's and the thing that's sad to me is it's hard to think of things that I enjoyed in our current year. But thank you for watching, guys. Please consider maybe becoming a member. Would love to build the Dragonsworn and Asherman ranks. Thank you to all my current members. I will. I haven't had a chance to make a thank you screen, but thank you all. I appreciate so much that you guys decided to become members. I'm working on hopefully some cool things for membership, so please consider that. And I thank you for watching. And until next time, all hail the Lord Dragon. Have a great day, evening, or whatever time it is where you're at. Thank you very much.